Hi guys and welcome back to Dice Down Gaming. In today's video, myself and Chris are going to cover how we think we can best prepare for a Steamroller, albeit your first event or your 50th. We're going to go our top tips on sort of preparing for the event in terms of physically, mentally, list preparation, and everything in between that. Before we get into that, a big thank you to anyone who's subscribed to my little channel so far. I think I'm closing in on 600 subscribers, which is really wild. I'm massively grateful, and if you like the video and haven't subscribed yet, I'd be really grateful for a subscribe and a like on the video. And I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments, or any things that you do that we missed, any little dark rituals you do before an event to get your dice to go. We'd love to hear all of them. And before we crack on, let's say hello to Chris. Hello Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. How about yourself?
Very good, thank you. I got to play a game of War Machine this week. I played Firequill, who's like one of my favourites, against Kyrax, and managed to kill Kyrax on top of 3. He came in pretty heavy, and we managed to get him, so that was good. Yeah, we got any War Machine this week?
Yeah, so I've played. The last 2 games I played were against McCoy into. No, it wasn't McCoy. Sorry, Vargas into Ragemonger, and I also played McCoy into Shirus. McCoy Shirus was a close one. I ended up getting ground out on scenario, and then which was obviously a loss. And then against Brian Bloods into Ragemonger, I got a assassination after my opponent had to commit too much to killing my armor 25 heavies. So.
Yep, yeah. The feat does a little bit, but it doesn't let you roll higher than a 12 on 2 dice. So if your armor's high enough, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Did you, because also you can rack rock wall, right? So you can somewhat negate the Whaler on Ragemonger as well.
Yeah, exactly. So rock walls and kind of good placement clouds, which Brian Bloods don't typically like as well. You can kind of limit what they can kind of drag in and pull as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. So cool. Couple of games for us this week. I suppose what might be good as well if we speak a tiny bit about our pedigree. I know some people might watch this thinking, why should I listen to these two guys about what I should do for a tournament? It might be good to just give a small idea of like maybe our experience in the game, so people can understand where we're coming from. In terms of myself, I played sort of Mark 2 and then Mark 3 and then a game called Guild Ball and then Mark 4. In Mark 2, I was sort of like moderately successful. I had a few 4-1s and a couple of 5-0s, but I never attended any W2Cs or anything. I did okay. And then the game sort of local to me died, and I moved on to a game called Guild Ball. I had decent success with Guild Ball. I was the captain for Team England. At one point, I was fortunate enough to like 81% win rate over like 200 games. So I achieved a good level of Guild Ball. I got into the top 10 into the world of Guild Ball, and yeah, I did okay in that game. And coming back into Mark 4, I'm still very new to it. I've only played since the end of January. I attended a few Steamrollers. I lost in the final of both of them, so bittersweet. But I really enjoy back into Mark 4. I've certainly played an awful lot of competitive games and played at the highest level, and I've played an awful lot of Steamrollers and or tournaments at other systems. So have a good chance to prepare for tournaments. How about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, so I've been playing since towards the end of Mark 2. I've had some fairly good results. I haven't won a big event, but I've come third at Welsh Masters. I've come third at Blood and Oil when that was a thing. I've also been to, I've been to 3 WTCs. I'm going to my 4th at the end of this year, and I'm also been the team captain twice for England Team 1 Lions, and then England Team 1 this year as well. So obviously team events are slightly different, but yeah,
Excellent.
I've been around.
Yeah, so that wasn't to blow our own horns. Hopefully, just to give an idea of someone who's going to watch and think, what is these guys' experience? Just to give you an idea if we do have a good amount of experience in playing tournaments. And you're team captain this year for England, I believe.
I am, yes. We had a very good result last year, so I thought I'd go for it again. And I was lucky enough to get the honour to do it once more.
Absolutely. A big shout out to any team event. If you play any sort of tabletop system and you've not been to a team event, you should absolutely go to them because they are excellent.
Pinnacle of events, best events in my mind.
Yeah, the banter is legendary.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. So we're going to cover three main topics. It's really going to be prepared for a Steamroller, but if you're watching this and you don't play War Machine, say you play 40k or Sigmar, it's going to be pretty relatable. All of these are sort of transferable to any sort of tabletop tournament event. So don't think it's just for War Machine. The three things we're really going to cover are sort of creating lists. That's going to be our first topic. Then we're going to look at preparing for the event, a bit physically, a bit mentally. And then number three is going to be sort of reviewing the list of others if you have the opportunity to do so, and then a bit of how to self-reflect on an event post event. So let's crack on with number one, which is creating lists. Obviously, in War Machine, slightly different to say Sigmar or 40k. You get two lists in War Machine rather than just the one. And I think the best thing to do before you sort of even start writing your list is to evaluate the meta you think you're going to play in. So if this is a local meta or if it's an international meta, so for Chris as an example, he's going to be looking at sort of the global meta. If I attend a local Steamroller to me, I might want to think, okay, what are my local players going to be playing rather than going on long tanks and looking at sort of global rankings. And I think that will help you before you even sort of begin creating your list, give you an idea of what direction you might want to take your list or what you might expect to see.
Yeah, for sure. Evaluating the meta is quite a big part of the game. It's a very fine line of taking your lists correctly for what you expect to see and and going too far to tech for a certain person, which in my experience never seems to work. You always get caught out they've brought a different faction or they've brought a different caster or but yeah, having a look into the meta is quite a big part of the game.
And I suppose it's worth saying also in terms of scenarios, in War Machine we play one Steamroller packet and there's 6 scenarios. We know we're going to play them 6 scenarios. If you're playing a game with like a larger scenario packet, I think it's always worth taking a look through all the scenarios you could play and keeping that in mind in terms of your list, because that might inform what units / what sort of mechanical abilities you want in your list as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, once you've sort of looked in the meta, global or local, and you've got an idea of what you think you might play, you then want to sort of move into your actual list construction. And I think the key thing for this one, Chris, is have a goal in your mind for each of your lists.
Yeah. And how I go about approaching a list is that you've got certain areas which you've got to kind of bear in mind, whether that's armor, gun lines, or kind of mass infantry. And that comes back into what we were discussing earlier about evaluating the meta. You need to know kind of what's hot at the moment, but also have an idea, and between your two lists be able to cover that. I kind of have two kind of ways of building lists. I either kind of do a sweeper and a pivot. So sweeper deals with 85, even 90% of the meta, because the list does one thing very well. It's either such a gear check or it's such a flexible list that you can do that. And then you've got the pivot list, which deals with, say, this one list has a problem with Brine Bloods, so I play this into Brine Bloods instead. Or if your faction isn't capable of that, not all factions are, it can take a lot of practice and a lot of know-how of the ins and outs of a certain list to be able to do that. Or you kind of have, you know which kind of, where lists are being played. That kind of comes with a lot more of time. For example, especially in the current packet with in the current situation as well with racks and things can be a lot more flexible and people could back different spells to deal with different things. So it's not always as simple as, for my basis, Vargas is the Chimera drop. It's not quite that simple, because if it's a Shyrus Kyrit's pair or a Nixian Rassic pair, it could be a very different situation. So knowing those nuances does come with time and something you need to be prepared for.
Do you think, out of interest, that spell racks and enable more of a list pairing where you can have one pairing that covers, say, 80-90% and one more pivot? Because that one warlock / warcaster can sort of pivot. And for example, say, for me, I could take Rough Seas against Gunlines and then swap out Rough Seas into, say, like Fortify and Black Spot into sort of heavy armor, say multiple infantry or things that are going to crack my armor. Do you think spell rack allows you more so to create a list that covers more areas than previously would when you didn't have when you had a fixed spell list?
Absolutely. I mean, a great example of that is when I went to WTC last year. I played Sabrith all 5 rounds at WTC because I was that practiced, and the strength of certain models and certain spells just meant that I could cover lots of different things. So whether that was red line for the jacks, if I needed to hit things heavily, or whether it was something more defensive like Windstorm to kind of protect myself, as you said, or Inviolable Resolve to kind of lean more into that. So yeah, absolutely. I think rack spells compared to something like Mark III, where each caster would have certain kind of ballparks. So, for example, Assyria, when I played Retribution, would play into the gunlights because of blinding light. Whereas now, every faction has some kind of gun protection, some better than others. So you can flex a lot more with the caster and a list in a pair. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose there's a few ways you could go about creating your pairing. Like Chris said, you could do sort of like a main and a pivot. So you know one leader you think can cover most of the meta, and then you have a pivot into specific things. That's sort of what I'm doing for Welsh for myself. I've got Foul Blood, which I'm pretty happy to play into everything, like Foul Blood and Form, Marauder Crew, and Lockabash. You know, and then I've got Fire Quill, which I specifically will play like against Sub-Zero and more Rain at the moment, and the rest is just Foul Blood. So you know, sort of that's what I'm sort of my approach at the moment. I suppose you could try and do like I've got an anti-gun line list and a anti-dude spam list. I think the main point we're trying to get across is that when you do create your list, have some sort of goal or plan where you will play each list, because you know ultimately they're a resource for you to use. So try and make each list somewhat viable and have a place.
exactly.
So with that in mind, we've looked at the local meta or the global meta, and we've got an idea that when we build our list, we're building them with purpose, and the things we place in them with purpose. Writing the list, I think main thing is make your decisions in your list with your goals in mind. So if you've decided that, my example, I'm going to play Boom Howler and I'm going to drop them into gun lines as an example. I could maybe look to take some Spirit Shamans for concealment, maybe some booty bosses to potentially get some prowl on my units, etc. So try and build your list with some sort of goal and intention, rather than sort of dropping things in just to fill the points.
I think the big thing about that is considering the scenario packet as well. So you've got to appreciate that sometimes on things like wolves or some of the best, as I say, laid back plans, best laid plans, you are going to have to put things out wide. You are going to have to sacrifice units, and you've got to be prepared that those things are going to have to happen. You are going to have to sacrifice pieces. We're in a version of the game and a match at the moment where piece trading is key, and it is forced upon you with the scenario. So you've got to bear in mind that if you've got 6 models in your list, you are not going to be very good at piece trading very well unless you are dealing your opponent such a heavy blow that they can't retaliate and you can win the scenario that way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think the current meta we're in is so lethal in terms of everything hits, you know, everything's basically mat or rat 9 or 8 most of the time. And then and wherever it hits, it tends to lift. So it's not like you can, you know, I'll place a warjack here and maybe I'll lose half of it. No, if you place it in threat range of something, you will lose the warjack. So you absolutely need things that you're happy to put in threat range. And my favourite unit for that is Pig Boarding Party. Absolutely love those guys. They're a great 6-point unit that can ambush if needed to. Say you're playing Trench Warfare, you can ambush onto someone's flag. But they're a great unit you can run into an objective zone or into engagement zone. Be happily that they're going to get lifted off, or sometimes not, because they're a pain in the bum to remove. But you need pieces that you're happy to give up to play that scenario game.
exactly, and that's like another module you need to consider. Obviously, you've got your defensive stuff, your buffs, so your Arcanists to give focus, or etc., etc. But the scenario at the end of the day is what's going to win you the game 6-7 times out of 10 with most styles of lists. So that is what you've got to be considering on your list.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the higher level you get, I found it hard to get caster kills. People were generally better at placing their leaders, and camping the correct amount of focus, and putting models into a way to make it hard. So I think most of the time you're forced into games where you have to position well, piece trade well, and then get up on scenario. Very rarely do I find when you're playing sort of a high level player that they just give you this free assassination. You're like, oh, but this is a nice easy game.
Yeah, I agree. And my general rule of thumb is if you're unsure on cards as well, which is again another part of the list you've got to consider, Blessing of the Gods, Sapper, and Lucky Penny are usually pretty much auto includes if you're unsure. Lucky Penny can drop out of there. It's just defenses and having Blessed as an option. It's so meta warping to have. I'd always recommend those options.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, as a side point, I actually dislike Blessing pretty much for that point, is that it's very hard to protect a key piece at the moment with a key spell, because everyone in reality has Blessing. So the turn that you need to negate that key spell, you absolutely do.
Yeah, it's a hard one because a lot of factions, say, to take Gravediggers, for example, they don't have it much innate Blessed at all. And they don't have loads of like armor debuffs or kind of power buffs, which the game is balanced around. Fair enough, and things could be rebalanced, but it's the game has been balanced around it at the moment. So unfortunately, it's an evil we're gonna have to put up with until it changes. Unfortunately,
yeah. Actually, I do agree that currently for both my little Welsh have Blessing, Sapar, and Lucky Penny, and they both have Pathfinder card because there's none of that in Brian Blood.
yeah, that's actually specific. It's a great thing because everything has it.
Everything has it.
I very rarely take it. So
yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be sent some of the old Ombre stuff by Steamroller, and again, everything has Pathfinder in that, so you wouldn't use it in there. Absolutely, command cards are a great point again where. Think about that maybe in the terms of list you're going to play against. So if you think, this is my I'll probably run into gun lines, Duck and Cover's probably a good shout, etc. So try and make all of your decisions with a purpose, evaluate your local meta, and have a goal in each of your lists when you're constructing them. So that's sort of like what we're going to cover for creating your list. One sort of like part of the game which I think most people love doing. I love sitting down on the app and just writing lists and then changing a point here and there. And I think everyone loves writing lists and talking about lists. List dozo is great.
It is.
Right, so we've wrote our lists. We've blocked them in. We're going to have some time before the event where we're going to prepare for the event in multiple ways. And first of all, I think probably this one's a bit of a no-brainer, but as many practice games as possible is advisable and will help you no end in every way possible. So you're going to get more familiar with your own list. You can stress test it, obviously. You're going to get faster on the clock, which is really, really important. You're going to get more used to your own rules, which will make you faster on clock. You're going to see more of the stuff you're going to play across the table, which gives you an idea of how your list performs against it. And it gives you an idea of how those scenario elements, which maybe you put in your list, perform on different scenarios.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things, especially if you're starting out on your kind of Steamroller journey, which goes from don't be scared to go to a Steamroller if you're new. It's a great experience. You'll nothing else. It's 3 games in a day. It's know your own stuff first. Like you can get so far by just knowing your stuff inside out and back to front. War Machine, even though it's a lot smaller than it used to be in Mark III, is still a massive game, and you're never going to have all the factions in your meta. So just know your own stuff to start with, and try and turn up to your first Steamroller knowing your own rules, your own stats, and that will take you very far. Ask your opponent, what's the general theme of this list? What's the general theme of this list? And that should give you a rough idea of what you're dropping into it.
Yeah, and I think also worth saying that I know War Machine previously had this sort of only play super competitive mentality, and I know that was when the thing that differentiated War Machine to 40k was that at the time 40k wasn't really Games Workshop competitive game, so War Machine took the route of, oh well, we are this competitive game, and that's what some lords some people over. But I would like to say that some of my best friends, Dan's a great example, a lot of my local meta I met through playing sort of competition at really high level, And most people you will play at high level are really excellent people that both want to enjoy the game and compete. And it's not, the enjoying the game isn't replaced by the competing. It's very much alongside. There's massive camaraderie and a social element to it as well. And just because you're going to a tournament and there's some people there that maybe want to win more than others, and maybe that's the right way to put it, but take competing more seriously than others, maybe that doesn't often replace their want to both be social with you and enjoy the game with you.
Bringing new players in and bringing more people to Steamroller. So you turn the clock back 18, 24 months, as the same 16 people were travelling around the UK to play each other. Now we're at a state where we're going to War Manchester in a few weeks, and it's I think it's at 48 or is it 64 players. Great event, lots of new faces turn up. It's great, and that's what we want to encourage. So most people want to be encouraging these players through, and kind of any questions, any help, they want to do it. So please, 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 if you're on the fence about going to a Steamroller, just do it. It's great.
Yeah, no, I absolutely echo that. Tournaments, general Steamroller is great. So get as many games as possible, and ideally, if you can, on clock, because that will really get your repetition in, or you get used to playing on a clock, get used to maybe how slow or fast you are on a clock. That's all really good practice. And if you can play some targeted games, if you've wrote a list, you think, oh well, this might be a bad matchup, I really encourage you to actually play those bad matchups. As nice as it is to sort of shy away from them and be like, oh, I don't want to play it because I know it's bad and maybe I'll dodge it. I think two things. Sometimes it isn't as bad as you think it is. If you're on a Discord and people are telling you this is an unwinnable matchup, sometimes it's not so bad if you give it a go. But secondly, you'll understand why it's a bad matchup. Maybe you can tech a bit more for it, or you'll get an idea of why it's bad and why your other list is maybe better for it.
And the chances are 5 to 10 games into that matchup, it won't be anywhere near as bad. I remember I had a situation before one WTC. It was Syria into Boulder 1, and it was a weird one because both of us felt it was a bad matchup. And one of my teammates and myself, we played it 20, 30 times to the point where we both felt favoured going into it. And that really helped us both in WTC because we both won that matchup at least once. So that's the thing. If you can put the games in and put the time into these bad matchups, they can turn into good matchups because your opponent isn't expecting it.
Yeah, absolutely. The more practice you get, the more well armed you're going to be, and your opponent might not be ready for that level of practice. I think also worth saying on that point, do try to avoid little tinkers to your list before a game. Like, do try and lock in your list and stick to it. As convenient as it would be, say for me, to example, I write my Foul Blood list and then I think, oh, I'm playing Gravediggers next. I'm just going to quickly drop in a Fuse Walker so I can have some eyeless sight. As much as that helpful is for that game, when you're at a tournament, you're going to have to play the one list you're locked in with. So do just lock in a list and try to avoid last minute tweaking for a matchup on the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're all guilty of it at one point or another, of trying to kind of, actually, I think this little tweak. And it turns out then you've ended up playing 10 games with 10 different lists, and you've learned very little from doing so. Unless you're very, very hot on kind of documenting and note-taking, it's not worth it. So try and play a game 3, 5, 10 times, depending on how often you get to play, before you try and make any changes, because the chances are you'll play a different matchup and you'll go, oh, actually, no, this actually really worked. Whereas in the game before, I didn't want that particular solo, it did nothing. So you get a better feel for the list and how it's kind of, you've put it in there, you've put that solo or that unit in for a reason at some point. So give it a go and give it some time to actually do something.
Yeah, actually, I think a great point there that is definitely worth setting like a minimum game to a list before you decide to swap. Maybe like 5, maybe 10 or whatever. Make it relative to how many games you play, but do try and give a list, some games before you decide it's awful and go and start again. Another comment on sort of preparing for the event and in your practice games, it's definitely worth playing, if you can, all the scenarios with your lists. You might find that in one list that you thought would be suited to Trench Warfare or Colour Guard example has a glaring weakness, and you don't want to find that out on the day of playing.
Yeah, and this is also another thing, especially if you're kind of newer player advice is speak to your opponents. Things have gone wrong. Ask your opponent, what did I do wrong? Well, what could I have done better on scenario? And that's how you learn. I'm not aware of any players in the UK that would have any problems of having a 5-minute chat at the end of the game to say, oh, actually, I think you could have done this, and this better. But a lot of people won't just give that information without being asked, because it comes across a little conceited of, oh, you've done this wrong, you've done that wrong.
Yeah, you know, like if someone's just lost to you, the last thing I would think to be is like, let me now let me tell you how you can do that better. But you're absolutely right that if you do ask for that advice, you know, we recently played a game when I played some old school Circle, and you know, like you and with against Boom Boom, and you very sort of easily pointed out you assassinated me, and you know, and you had no problem. I said to you, where could I have put Bradagus, or where could I have deployed the army better? And you very kindly offered, you know, where I could have deployed Bradagus and where I could have played and how I could have played for the scenario better. I think you'll find that people are very, very happy to try and offer advice where they think where you could have maybe improved your own game and performed a bit better. So you yourself as a player can keep growing.
And also seeing your opponent's point of view on the situation, because the amount of games I've played where I've gone, oh yeah, this is terrifying. This piece was terrifying me, and then like, oh well, I couldn't bring that forward because this model just completely shuts down, and it gets you the perspective of how the other faction's thinking or how the other player's thinking, because it's not necessarily always kind of a balanced kind of, I'm at 10% against this and my opponent's 90% positive against this. It's sometimes a lot murkier than that.
Yeah, and similarly, I've had games where, you know, say you've just scraped a win or just scraped a loss, and you think, gosh, like I felt really under the cuff of that game. Your opponent says me too, so you're both actually feeling that you were both in a terrible position. So I think communication is really important.
Definitely.
Great. And I think, you know, so say we played 10 games. We've tried all the scenario. We've tried, you know, most of the scenarios. We've tried against different matchups, good and bad. I think at that point, it's probably worth maybe doing some sort of iteration. If it's gone very good and you've got no complaints, awesome. But maybe there's some solos, a unit that you put in there for reason X, and you don't feel like they're performing to that reason. I think after a decent amount of games and a decent amount of sort of self-feedback, it's absolutely worth doing some iteration if you feel it's necessary.
Yeah, and this is why, especially if you're wanting to progress and push on to kind of the WTC levels or the X and 1 level in events, is I always recommend tracking your games, making notes, what faction you've played, kind of what you thought of the matchup, etc. Because it can easily get lost. You can think, oh yeah, that was a dead easy matchup, but then you go back and check your notes and go, oh, actually, I've marked that down as a 4. I thought it was a 2, and then all of a sudden, kind of it lets you kind of develop those lists. Or I've played against Gravediggers 10 times and I've lost 7 games. What little tweaks can I do now to try and do into that? And that's something I get quite a lot of my players, my WTC team, to do, to track their games, to kind of go back through that and say, why do you think this is happening? Why do you think that's happening? And you can do that for yourself as well. So if you really want to be pushing and kind of expanding on your ability, it's probably not suitable for if you go to your first Steamroller, but if you're wanting to kind of get to that X and 1 or try and get into WTC, highly recommend. And it's always great to show captains when you are applying kind of, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm struggling, and the captain can help develop you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're essentially building up sort of, you know, a library of knowledge at that point, you know, and you're developing what you think is a good and bad matchup, and maybe you're picking up on sort of poor play attributes. So you keep noticing that your positioning was poor on this turn, or okay, I gave away this model where I didn't need to, or I was overly cautious. You know, from one game to other, it's very easy to forget that you lost the last game because you were cautious and you won the last game for X and Y. But as you build up over 10 or 20 or 50 games, you build up this common trend of, well, I'm doing this well, I'm doing this poorly. You can then act on the things that you're doing poorly.
Exactly. And the thing I always do is when I'm making notes or tracking my games is I look at it straight after the game to get all the details in. And I also look at it the morning after or the evening after to kind of go, actually, no, I didn't do this very well, or I didn't do that very well. And it's something quite often I do with my opponents. Like, I'll talk about them in the morning. Actually, how did you feel this was after sleeping on it? But that's just a personal thing.
No, but there's always so I tend to play games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and nearly always Wednesday and Thursday morning I wake up thinking, ah, gosh, if I had put this animus on this model and moved it there, I'm pretty sure I would have been in a better position, or I would have won, or I would have not lost, or actually I would have lost if I didn't do that. The day after, normally my brain is buzzing with, oh, you could have done this actually, because you have that sort of time to process it from the game, and then you're thinking back on how you did it, and you've got that clarity of there's no clock, there's not an opponent. You're just fully going through what you could have done, and I think reflection is a great tool to grow.
Sure, sure.
Excellent. So I think the last thing we are gonna sort of talk about is maybe physical preparation before the event, and then we're gonna go on to sort of maybe the day before and some stuff after. So obviously, physical prep. A few things for me, and then I'll let Chris give his wisdom. But for me, a good night's sleep is really makes a difference. I sort of tend to function very poorly when I haven't sleep, and I had a notable difference to me in when I've slept well and poorly. Really, I've always performed better in the morning when I've had a good night's sleep. So good night's sleep always I found massive difference. This one sounds lame, but generally sort of being well hydrated makes a massive difference to me as well. I've had some days where I've only drunk like Coke all day and I felt awful. Water is your friend. H2O, drink it. And also, I would say this is more like for the actual day, I suppose. But genuinely, like having some food before the first game also markedly makes me sort of more aware of what's going on. Like even just a little banana or an apple pre-game, like first game. If you like have poor sleep, you haven't eaten anything, and you've only had a bottle of Coke, I promise you will not be feeling great for your game one. Chris, what about some physical prep that you sort of would recommend?
A big one for me is get organised. So night before, one of the things I typically do is I go through my 2 lists, print them off, or get them up on War Room, and get all the models out. Make sure I've got everything. Make sure I've got everything prepped. It's back and then packed in the bag in a relatively sensible frame, as well as go through my tokens. I use something like this. So a sorter. I'll have all my tokens set out for the 2 casters, focus tokens, things, and it just sets you up well for the next day. Make sure you've got everything ready. You're not getting to a tournament going, oh, I haven't got this so and so spell, so you're rattling round round 1 to try and find your upkeep spell, or I haven't brought a ranger commando, gravedigger ranger. Oh, what am I going to do? Am I playing a model down? Can I find somebody that can lend me one? And on that basis as well, there's also turning up with plenty of time. Just set yourself up for success round 1, especially if it's kind of you're new to War Machine and you don't want to be putting extra pressure on yourself round 1. If the event starts at 9:30, doors open at 9, try and aim for 9. Try and aim for 9 so you can get to your table, you can set your models out, which you know that are all there from the night before you've packed. You've got your tokens all nicely set out in a tray or in separate bags or whatever you've got to hand. You're settled. Going to your first steamroller might come with a little bit of nerves. Don't add to them. It would be my point of view. And also, it also helps you with clock because everything's there. It'll help you deploy. It'll help you kind of know where everything is.
Yeah, I think that is actually a really great point. As so I suffer quite bad from anxiety. Being in a calm mental space before the game starts is something really important to myself as well, and it can set the game, like the tone for the game, right? If you're starting panicked that I haven't got all my dice and where's this model and have I got this token, and obviously then the clock starts, which is another level of I've got to do all these things. You want to start your game in a calm mental space. Pretty important for me. I found that really important. So absolutely get organised, turn up punctually, and give yourself the best chance to sort of approach the game with time on your hands, so you don't feel like you're stressed before you even rolled a dice. Let the stress come when you roll your first double once.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is, if you turn up with time and kind of you're not pressured to be turning your clock on as soon as you kind of turn up at the table, is you can have a conversation with your opponent. You're new to the game, your opponent's there. Right, sorry, I'm new. I appreciate we probably haven't got time to go through what every model does. Can you tell me the general gist of what your list does, some key pieces? Again, most people will be absolutely fine going through with that stuff. I'm usually an oversharer when I get asked for that. I tell you all my synergies, all my tricks, and or overshare with that kind of information. But again, try and kind of steer that conversation. If it's too much information to say, right, that's enough. I'm going to get bogged down. Know what you want to know, because I mean, I've had it when playing against Gravediggers, against some of my locals. I've given them too much information. I'm trying to help them in their turn, but all you're doing is you're oversaturating them with information. So try and have that conversation. Try get an understanding with your opponent. Some people take it to the degree of saying, if the dice is cocked, I'll always re-roll it. Things like that. You can have those conversations. Do what's going to make you feel better for that extra 2 hours that you're going to be spending with the person across the table with you.
Yeah, that is a really great point that I find a great way to ease tension and stress and generally calm myself. It is just talk to someone. So if you have 10 minutes before the game, talk about their list, talk about where they're from, how long have they played, do they play any other games? Immediately, I think you'll find yourself that you're no longer worried about the things you're worried about. You're just sort of in the moment with a person, and that will let you sort of begin the game in a much more of a low-level, calm state than maybe what you would be if you were turned up late and you forgot a model and you've got no dice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, I've done all that. Been running around trying to find a model that I've forgotten, or one of my teammates' models, which is usually what I'm doing. But yeah, just try and reduce your stresses. Have a look at Google Maps the night before, see how long it's actually going to take. When you wake up, check the traffic and things like that.
That is a great point. Last time I went to London for the Bamboo Cafe, I don't know what I did. I checked Bank, and it was like a 25-minute walk from Bank, and I was like, great. I'll check if Holborn is any closer. I clicked Holborn, and what I didn't do is change it from car to walk. So it said 15 minutes, and I was like, I'm just going to go to Holborn then. Get off at Holborn, click walk, 55 minutes. I was like, And I was like, at that point, I had 20 minutes left to get to Bad Moon Cafe. So I got an Uber. So prepare, like Google Maps before the night is actually a really, really good bit of advice from Chris. Because you won't catch yourself short like I did.
Exactly. And also, if you can travel, if you go to a further event, travel with some of your friends, especially if other people going to the event, especially if you're nervous since your first Steamroller. Ask them questions on the drive. Ask them, how do you do this? How do you do that? You can go through the Steamroller document as well, understand the little nuances that kind of are differences from the game, but Steamroller kind of sometimes knowing tiebreakers when you get into that extra level and things like that, understanding how these kind of things work, how the scoring, do the flag score on that scenario, etc. All good things you can discuss on the time and kind of get rid of some of those pre-event nerves as well if you're new.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really, really great points there, Chris. Thank you. So that's sort of 1 and 2 covered. We've wrote our lists. We've done sort of long-term preparation for the event. We're going to cover sort of some last-minute preparation you might be able to do, and then cover maybe some things you might want to self-reflect on after the event. So the first one, if possible, this isn't possible for all events because sometimes the lists don't unlock until the day. But if they do unlock before the day of the event, I quite enjoy looking through what lists people have taken, so maybe what you can expect what to play, and you can sort of start say mentally spitballing. Or if I pair against Chris round 1, for example, maybe I'll drop this list. And you can have a little bit of sort of mental prep in your mind about who you might see and what you might play.
Yeah, and again, talking to people in your meta, I'm potentially going to have to play against this at my next event. What do you think it does? Can you play it into me? Can you do this? Can we discuss it and kind of have those conversations? Because the chances are the person you're asking that plays the faction might know the trick behind it, might know how it's played, might even speak to the person and know that. It's not about kind of trying to get him up on one of them. It's building that understanding of kind of, right, okay, that's not quite how I understood that list played. Maybe I have to play this, maybe I have to play that, etc.
And especially if you're, I say Welsh Masters is a good example. The people, the way that people run Shadow Tongue, for example, up north, might be completely different to the way they'll run them south, right? So then you can start looking at sort of how the lists are varying, for like locally, geographically. You might get a cool idea for your sort of future events. You might get an idea, I might be able to play against this. And again, then you can discuss that with your local meta, discuss that with the person you might play. You can just get a bit more sort of like maybe ease the nerves a bit more and get a bit more sort of preparation for the event you're about to play.
Exactly. I mean, it's too late to change the list at that point. So, but getting some reps into it, I mean, that's what we do with WTC. We'll probably find out lists some point in kind of August or September. We'll have 6, 8, maybe even 10 weeks to kind of practice these things. It's too late to change, so try and find plans around those kind of things. And kind of obviously that changes over to a large degree, and that prep will change on your experience. If you're a new Steamroller, if you first Steamroller, have a look to see if there's any models you don't know what they do, and read up on the war room. If you're trying to kind of improve your play, pick a few lists which you don't understand, and then if you're in WGC X and 1 kind of bracket, as I like to look at things, deep dive into everything. I'm going to play this into this, and you can even make a list. Print off the Longshanks list. Click on the player, see what he drops into, kind of, and that's why Longshanks is such a good tool, because you can go onto a Longshanks player. So look at kind of Aaron. Oh, okay, so when Aaron plays into kind of my pair, because chances are somebody else is running your pair, he drops Foulblood. Okay, so now I know anything into Fireblood, I can look into that. Be prepared that you might get blindsided by that, because again, Aaron might be looking at you and saying, "Oh, right, so drops this when he drops into Fireblood," and it might be, but it gives you more information into how you're going to approach things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that sort of covers everything you could do before a Steamroller to be as prepared as possible for the day. The next thing we'll talk briefly about maybe what you can do during the day, which we haven't sort of pre-discussed, Chris, but I think maybe we can talk about what you're going to do during the day to try and make your day as easy as possible, stress-free as possible. Then the last thing we'll talk about is sort of self-reflection. I think really, really important part of any sort of growth outside of tabletop is a bit of self-reflection and how you've performed and your good and low areas. So we'll do that next. So first of all, a bit of, say, on the day, you've turned up on time, you're playing your games. A few things for me that help me sort of, say, keep calm and keep stress-free. First of all, again, definitely drink a lot. Stay hydrated during the day. I'd say this is unironically, bring some sort of smell good thing. It's just because genuinely, without sort of being the stereotypical nerd, if you're playing in like a 120 player event in a big hall and it's hot, naturally these happen. A little quick refresh every game will make you feel a bit fresher as well. You throw some water on your face, have a spray, you sort of reset for the next game. And I would say try to avoid maybe the biggest lunch possible. I've had lots of sort of round 3s and 4s where I have been hugely bloated from a big dinner, and it's not helped me for the rest of the day.
Yeah. And this is the other thing, again, going back for newer players, what you said, Aaron, is ask people about the venue if you've not been before. You go to Firestorm Games, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's got air conditioning, so you can dress appropriately. Element Games, again, another great venue, tends to rely on the amount of people in the room to heat it, and so it's kind of, if it's a winter's day, put an extra layer on for if you go into some of these events, and it's just different kind of places and knowing kind of what to do for that. And as I say, especially if you've got somebody, if you're very self-conscious or kind of you are anxious, taking some extra deodorant or even an extra top if it's that warm can save you a lot of kind of stress. Or
yeah, absolutely. You want to make these things stress-free. The ultimate objective of the day, while it may be to win, is also in unison to have a good day and enjoy the day. And I think that sort of also comes in line with also, I think having a sensible objective for the day will actually really help you. As much as we would all like to go 4-0, 5-0, if you go there and you're expecting to go 5-0, maybe unwarrantedly expecting to go 5-0, and you lose a few games and that frustrates you, that might be avoided if you're a bit more sensible and in your expectation for the day. So a good example for myself is, we're going to Welsh Masters. That'd be fantastic. I would love to go 7-0 and win Welsh Masters. I mean, everyone would. That would be awesome. But there's people there that have probably prepped a lot more than me. Have got a lot more experience in the game and are more well positioned. So I'm going with the Welsh Masters. I would love to go 5-2. That would be, I think, a really good result for me. I'd be happy with that. If I go 4-3, I'd also be happy. But if I lose my first 2 games and I realise I'm not going to go 7-0, I'm not going to let that ruin my event. And I think having a sort of sensible estimation of where you might want to be at the event will help you have an overall more enjoyable day.
Yeah, some targets are a good thing, especially if you're wanting to improve and kind of go. But again, there's nothing wrong with a target for kind of, this is Steamroller is, I want to go there and get all my rules right. I want to kind of have 3 good games, 3 games where I don't just feel I've been rolled over. They don't have to be numeric, and that this is something I was terrible for early on. Is I want to go X and 1. I want to go. Sorry, X and 1 is kind of. I've only lost 1 game in a 4-5 game event or something, and I wasn't ready for that. And a lot of people kind of, especially they've come from another system where they have been competitive, is they automatically want to do well. And I think a lot of the time is, for some of us, we're all adults with kind of, whether you've got family, friends, kids, commitments, you're in four games is benefit to a lot of us. It's like, I don't know about everybody else, but I don't get very often to play 4 games in a day. Enjoyment first, have those targets, don't hang. I mean, I target myself to go X and 1 for most events or better, realistically, or win events if possible. It's not happened yet at a big event, but I want to. But don't get hung up on that. That is not the only reason you go into these things. You're seeing your friends, you're playing the game, you're there to have some fun as well. So don't hang everything on your performance. Yes, you want to do well, but that's not everything.
Yeah, totally agree. And I totally agree that 0-4 for a day is a fantastically reasonable objective. If your objective is to go play the rules, hope that you get all your rules right during the game and meet 4 new people, that is also completely viable and completely correct. Nothing wrong with that. And totally agree with Chris that, local Steamrollers, to me, we sort of like say in Harlow and Chelmsford and say London, they might only be like 6 to 8 people. That very much doesn't change that, for me, it's 3 games of War Machine, which I very rarely get to play in a week. So just enjoy your 3 games in a day, take what you can from it, and it doesn't have to be target oriented, like Chris said. Excellent.
So just a few more things I'd like to say again during your games, just to kind of take a little bit of that stress off. Try and keep organised through your game. It's your opponent's turn. Pick up your tokens, tidying them back up into the piles that you've nice and neatly put them for your last night's preparation. Models go back onto your tray when they're dead, unless of course you can revive them or whatever. It's quite important that you keep them in your opponent's sight so they know what's going on. And just little things like that, but also be planning your turn whilst kind of your opponent's playing. Don't be on your phone kind of chatting away and kind of not paying attention to what's on the table. It's rude to your opponent, in my personal opinion. A quick text is fine, but don't have your nose in it for the whole game. But be thinking, oh right, okay, that's that. So I'm not going to measure it now, because again, I don't particularly want to distract my opponent from their turn. But I can eyeball that roughly. That looks like it's in range. I can maybe pick that up with that unit and be planning, so you have a rough idea of what you're going into.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, absolutely using your opponent's turn to sort of think where you can is a really, really great tip. Obviously, I think, like you say, don't make measurements in your opponent's turn. It can be very distracting for your opponent. If you're playing on clock, you don't want to use their time up. That's very much not fair. So don't be, I'm just going to quickly measure from this to this during their turn, because that might sort of break their chain of thought and distract them, and you don't want to do that. Secondly, you don't want to sort of give away what you might want to do in your turn, and then they suddenly react to what you're going to do to what they've done. So very much just let your opponent play their turn. Completely agree that don't be on your phone. I was about to swear there, but it's really rude. Don't do that. Like when you're sort of like trying to play a game, it's very much a cooperative experience. And sometimes I'm playing a game like I'm going to move here and attack here, and like the opponent's on their phone and they just say yes, and I'm like, okay, are you playing the game with me, or is it like a solo experience? So please do like engage with your opponent as much as you can. Be sort of positive and react to what they're saying, and be sort of respectful of them across the table. So yeah, absolutely use your time during their clock to sort of plan what you can do.
And the thing that I'd always recommend doing, and this, please don't abuse this because every TA will be in my email inboxes or Discord and everything, is between rounds, pause the clock briefly. Just agree the state of the game, agree what the score is, agree what round it is, and then carry on. Because that is where a lot of stress can come, especially when the turns are tight and kind of you get into round turn 5, 6, and you're on 6, 7 minutes. The round timer is not going to suffer for 30 seconds of the clock paused.
Yeah,
I do not condone pausing the clock loads during a game. It ends up with mistakes, clocks being paused and not reset, and things like that, or kind of rounds running too long because people are pausing the clock for every discussion. It's either judge, call the judge over to resolve a dispute, but for 30 seconds between rounds, pause your clock. Yes, I'm scoring 1, 2, 3 here. You're scoring 1, 2. The score is currently this, and it is going to this. We're into the next round.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent point.
Yeah, then you don't end up at the next round going, no, I scored this much last turn. No, we've got it wrong. Oh, and then how do you approve that? How do you discuss that? And it just ends up in an ill will. And going back to my point about judges is don't be scared to call the judge. It's not saying you believe your opponent's lying. It's not that you think there's anything going on. It's an interpretation of a rule or if you believe you are correct, put your hand up, say judge, get them to come over. Again, don't feel like you've been hard done to because you've come away because the person across from you is more confident and kind of is going to do and the rules. Call them and say to your opponent, look, you 100% might be correct, but I'd just like to get this checked with a judge, or I'd like this measurement done by a judge because it's pretty close, or I need this. I need this kind of what's it called, where you place a model and
proxy.
Models have to move because of it. No, where you place a model and everything else gets spread out.
Oh, the rule of least disturbance.
There we go. I usually call the judge over for that because it's such a messy kind of thing to do. So don't be scared of that because it's a big thing. And then as Aaron's just alluded to there, proxy stuff out and make sure you, with your opponent, you saying your intentions. So if you say that something's out of 12, you show them it's out of 12, something gets nudged within, you can nudge it back a 0.1 of an inch with your opponent's approval. Don't just do it. Don't start moving your models in your opponent's turn. But say, oh, we agreed this was out of 12. Do you mind if I nudge this back a bit? And 95% of the time, they'll go, yeah, of course, we agreed that. Not a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that was absolutely spot on. I think two things for me. A good example, of using your opponent's clock when your opponent's doing their turn for your own clock. This Wednesday, I played against Kyrax with Firequill, and once my opponent had finished Firequill's activation, I immediately thought, okay, he's not got much fury, and I think I can get to him. So the rest of my opponent's turn, while I was engaging with him and responding and doing what I needed to do, I actually was almost like working out my assassination during his turn. So that let me execute it pretty quickly. So using your opponent's turn for your own sort of fault when you can is worth it, absolutely. And then secondly, absolutely agree with you, a quick pause on the clock. When to sort of make sure that you're both clear on score. There's nothing worse than someone thinking they're 1 point higher or lower and then getting past the turn to sort of conclude that or rectify it. It's only feel bad for everyone involved, you, your opponent, and the judge. It's only bad. But also you might get 30 seconds off. Like when you're down to, I played David in the final of the Bad Boom Cafe Steamroller a couple of months ago. He was down to like 2 minutes. And when you're down to like 2 minutes and you've done all your turn, a little 10 seconds of like pause, deep breath, clear your tokens away and conclude the score will make the game much, much cleaner for you and your opponent. because ultimately you don't want to win through stress or mistake. You want to win through play. So it's a really good point from Chris of pausing the clock for a tiny bit between rounds is advisable. Excellent. So we were talking about preparing your list, preparing for the event, and playing the day. So we'll wrap up with some sort of self-reflection thoughts on what you can do to improve, and then we'll wrap up the whole video, and that will be really good. So once the day's done, hopefully you've had a really good day, and it's not been too stressful because you've prepared and you were on time and you've done things during the game to make your games enjoyable. I think it's really, really important, and depends on how in depth you want to go for it. Like Chris said, if you are aiming to, say, apply for a WTC, taking a detailed log of your games and what went wrong or went bad is really, really great, because you then can use that post-event, because often I'll forget a week later the intricacies of games. But if you're not looking to go that in depth and you're not looking to apply for WTC, but you do want to have some sort of growth between tournaments because you want to improve your results, I think at least on the day after, take a look back at the games you played. You can always look on Longshanks for sort of the points you scored and what you played against, and just take a look at where do you think your losses came. Was it positionally? Was it on this scenario? Where your wins came from? What did you do well? And use all of that to sort of push forward as a player.
100%. Exactly what Aaron's just said. Just reiterating the things again. A lot of people have spreadsheets that they run on Google Sheets or anything. I have one. If anybody wants a personal one, just drop me a message. I'll happily send that across blank, not with all my data in. But yeah, just chances are somebody who wants to be competitive is probably logging. There's a good chance they may be logging their games or know somebody that is. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. So I think that sums up our guidance to preparing for a Steamroller / tournament. I think one thing I'll echo, and I'm sure Chris will echo as well, is that please don't be afraid to go to a tournament if you're a new player. Myself, I suffer bad from anxiety, and even going into a new room of people can sometimes be, pretty stressful. And then you have the added layer of that you think these players are, they're all competitive players and they're all there to sort of crush you under their foot and only win. I would say that the best people I've found are almost the highest level competitive players are the best people I've found to play. And everyone is there primarily to have a good day and enjoy the tabletop game that you want to enjoy, and sort of meet people and meet new faces. And if you are nervous about it, reach out to a friend, or if you know a local meta, reach out to the local meta. And I promise you that there will be nearly always a welcoming environment for you to find if you are nervous about going to a tournament.
Even if you don't have a particularly big meta and you're the only one turning up, get on the Discords, get on, have a chat with the kind of people who are going to the event. For example, the UK Discord, which I partially admin, we've got groups, we've got chats for the event. Chat with people. I'm coming on my own. Is anybody able to help? Put in the faction chats. I'm going to War Manchester. I play Gravediggers. Anybody want to chat lists? I'll happily chat. I'll happily chat with any of the factions I know anything about. And then you've already know somebody. You can go find them, go chat with them when you arrive. Get involved. War table. That's one of the best ways before going to an event of meeting loads of new people not from your meta. For example, we're running one now and there's 20 people attending, all the way up from as far as Yorkshire, all the way down to Cornwall. So, and down in the southeast with Aaron and the likes. Meet new people, talk with people.
And that is a really great example of how to see different sort of lists from the different regions, from the comfort of your own home. War Table is a really fantastic tool. Would absolutely recommend it. It's a great way to see new lists and meet new people. And if you're nervous about meeting new people, doing that in the comfort of your own home across the screen, you might find a bit less nerve-wracking than walking into a whole room of new people for the first time. Once you played a few games on War Table, chances are when you go to an event and maybe it's not local to you, there might be someone from War Table and you've immediately broken that ice in that room.
Exactly. War Table is great for those extra games a week. Doesn't replace real life games. Please don't think we're trying that. But again, it's a great way to keep social. An extra game a week, 2 games a week. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And again, meeting new people.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I think this could be a really useful information for anyone who's certainly new to Steamroller, and certainly for anyone who is looking to develop from maybe you go to Steamrollers and you're happy with your results, but you want to start pushing on to say 3-1s, 4-1s. You want to start tracking your results and you want to see growth as a player. Hopefully what me and Chris have discussed today can help you achieve that. So a big thank you to anyone who, if you've got this far in the video, massively thank you. We're really grateful. A massive thank you to Chris for coming on, mate. I'm really grateful for your time.
No, thank you for having me.
Excellent. And until the next one, guys, we'll see you very soon.